When my sister-in-law Madison first invited me on what she called an all-women family vacation to Miami, I thought maybe we were finally going to bond. After 3 years of marriage to her brother Jake Madison, and I had maintained a polite but distant relationship. She was always friendly enough at family gatherings, but we had never spent time together one-on-one. So when she called me up with genuine excitement in her voice, suggesting we take this trip together to some fancy resort she had picked out, I felt hopeful. Maybe this was her way of welcoming me fully into the family. Before I tell you what happened at that airport, let me know in the comments where you are watching from, and do not forget to hit that like button, because this story is about to take a turn that none of us saw coming. Make sure to subscribe too, because trust me, you are going to want to hear how this ends. Madison had been texting me constantly about the trip details ever since that initial phone call. At first, I found her enthusiasm endearing. She insisted on handling all the bookings, which I appreciated since I had been swamped at work. But as the days went on, her behavior started to feel a little strange. Every time I offered to help with the planning or suggested we split the costs, she would brush me off with responses like, "Do not worry about it. I have got everything handled," or "Let me take care of this as my treat." The requests started getting more specific and unusual. Madison asked me to bring extra cash for emergencies, which seemed odd for a resort vacation, where most things would be charged to the room. When I asked about the exact itinerary, she was evasive, saying she wanted to keep some surprises and that we would figure it out when we get there. I tried to pin down details about spa appointments, restaurant reservations, or activities we might do together, but Madison always had vague answers. Jake, my husband, expressed some mild concern about the sudden invitation. "It is just weird that she is being so secretive about everything," he said one evening as I was packing. "Madison usually overshares about every detail of her life. Why is she being so mysterious about this trip?" I dismissed his doubts, wanting to believe that Madison genuinely wanted to build a stronger relationship with me. Maybe she was just nervous about spending extended time together and wanted everything to be perfect. I spent an entire Saturday shopping for vacation clothes, buying new swimsuits and sundresses. The excitement was building, and I started imagining all the conversations we would have, the memories we would make. I pictured us lounging by the pool, getting pedicures together, maybe even having heart-to-heart talks about family and life. This felt like the breakthrough moment I had been hoping for. The night before our departure, Madison sent me several last-minute changes. She wanted to meet at the airport an hour earlier than originally planned, saying she had heard the security lines were terrible in the mornings. Then she texted, asking if I could check us both in online, claiming her internet was acting up. These small requests seemed reasonable enough, though something about her urgency felt off. The morning of our departure, I woke up early and double-checked everything. My suitcase was packed with carefully chosen outfits. I had my passport ready, and I was genuinely excited about the day ahead. I arrived at the airport 30 minutes before our agreed meeting time, wanting to make sure everything went smoothly. Madison was nowhere to be found, which surprised me since she had been so insistent about the early timing. When I approached the check-in counter to get our boarding passes, the airline agent looked confused as she pulled up our reservation. "You are listed as the primary booker for these first-class tickets to Miami," she said, showing me her screen. I stared at the information, trying to process what I was seeing. The total cost was nearly $4,000, far more than Madison had mentioned when she said the trip was her treat. Madison finally arrived, rushing through the airport doors with 2 large suitcases and a carry-on bag. She looked nervous and kept glancing around as if she were expecting someone. Her luggage seemed excessive for what was supposed to be a simple 3-day girls' trip. When I mentioned the ticket confusion, Madison laughed it off, saying there must have been some mix-up with the booking system, but that everything would work out fine. As we headed toward security, I noticed Madison was constantly on her phone, texting someone with unusual intensity. Every few minutes, her phone would buzz, and she would quickly check it, always angling the screen away from me. When I asked who she was talking to, she claimed it was just her mom checking on our travel plans. But her behavior seemed too secretive for casual family updates. Standing in the security line, I felt my first real moment of doubt about this trip. Something was definitely not adding up, but I could not put my finger on exactly what was wrong. Madison seemed more anxious than excited, which was the opposite of how she had sounded on the phone when planning this vacation. After we made it through security and found our gate, I decided to grab some coffee for both of us, while Madison found seats. As I was walking back with our drinks, I heard Madison on her phone, and her words stopped me in my tracks. "Derek, baby, everything is going according to plan," she was saying in a low, intimate voice. "I know this is crazy, but I promise it is all going to work out perfectly." I stood frozen, holding our coffee cups, trying to process what I had just heard. Derek, who was Derek Madison, had been single for the past 6 months after a messy breakup with her long-term boyfriend. At least, that was what she had told the entire family. I approached our seats slowly, my mind racing with questions. When Madison saw me coming, she quickly ended her phone call and smiled brightly. "Perfect timing with the coffee," she said, but I could see the nervous energy in her eyes. I sat down and decided to address what I had heard directly. "Madison, who is Derek?" I asked, keeping my voice calm but firm. Her face went through several expressions before she settled on a sheepish smile. "Okay, I was going to tell you," she said, speaking quickly. "Derek is someone I have been seeing for the past few weeks. I know this is supposed to be our girls' trip, but he is actually going to meet us in Miami. I thought maybe we could all hang out together." My stomach dropped. This was not at all what I had signed up for. "Madison, you specifically told me this was an all-women family vacation. That was the entire premise of this trip." My voice was getting louder, and I could feel other passengers starting to look in our direction. Before Madison could respond, a tall man with sandy brown hair approached our gate area. Madison immediately stood up and waved him over with obvious excitement. "Derek over here," she called out, confirming my worst fears. This Derek was clearly much younger than Madison, probably in his early 20s, and definitely not anyone I had ever seen at family gatherings. "Scarlett, meet Derek," Madison said, as if this were the most natural introduction in the world. "Derek, this is my sister-in-law I have told you so much about." Derek looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot and barely making eye contact with me. He seemed just as surprised by this encounter as I was. I could not contain my frustration any longer. "Madison, this is completely different from what you described. You made this sound like a bonding opportunity for us as family. Now, you are telling me this is actually a couple's vacation, that I am somehow supposed to be a third wheel on." Madison became defensive, crossing her arms and raising her voice to match mine. "I don't see why this is such a big deal, Scarlett. We can still have our girl time, and Derek will just join us for some activities. I thought you would be happy that I found someone special." Other travelers were definitely staring now, but Madison seemed oblivious to the scene we were creating. Derek finally spoke up, looking genuinely confused. "Madison, I thought you said your sister-in-law was excited about meeting me and that she had suggested I come on this trip." His words hit me like a punch to the stomach. Madison had been lying to both of us, manipulating the situation from multiple angles. The airport announcement system crackled to life, informing us that our flight was delayed by 2 hours due to weather conditions. This news, which would normally be frustrating, actually gave me time to process what was happening and figure out my next move. During the unexpected waiting period, I decided to check my email for the booking confirmation that I had received earlier that week. I had glanced at it briefly when it arrived, but had not read through all the details since Madison was handling the arrangements. As I scrolled through the confirmation, my anger turned to complete shock. Not only was I listed as the primary booker for the expensive first-class tickets, but I was also financially responsible for the entire hotel reservation, including an additional room that had been booked under Derek's name. The total cost for the 3-day trip was approaching $8,000, all charged to my credit card. Madison had somehow obtained my card information and used it to fund what was essentially her romantic getaway. I felt physically sick as I realized the scope of Madison's deception. She had planned this romantic couple's vacation and disguised it as a family bonding trip, all while making me unknowingly pay for everything. The extra cash she had asked me to bring, the evasive answers about activities, the excessive luggage. It all made horrible sense now. Derek was sitting a few seats away, looking increasingly uncomfortable as he overheard bits of our conversation. When I showed Madison the booking confirmation on my phone, demanding an explanation, she had the audacity to act like I was overreacting. "Look, Scarlett, I know this looks bad, but my credit card got declined when I tried to book everything. I was planning to pay you back once we got to Miami." Her explanation only made things worse. "You used my credit card without permission to book a vacation for your boyfriend, who I had never even heard of until 20 minutes ago." I could hear my voice getting shrill, but I did not care anymore. Madison's response revealed the true depth of her manipulation. "Derek did not know about the financial arrangement," she admitted. "I told him that you were generously treating us to this vacation as a way to welcome him into our family circle." The lies were layering on top of each other, and I realized Madison had been orchestrating this deception for weeks. Derek stood up abruptly, looking disgusted. "Madison, you told me Scarlett had offered to pay for this trip because she wanted to get to know me. You said it was her idea." His face was red with embarrassment and anger. "I never would have agreed to come if I knew you were lying to both of us." Madison completely dismissed Derek's concerns, and my obvious distress doubling down on her position instead of apologizing. "Honestly, you are both being dramatic about this," she said, rolling her eyes. "Scarlett, you can afford this trip, and it is not like you are getting nothing out of it. You are getting a vacation too." Her complete lack of acknowledgement for the deception was stunning. She continued to argue that I should be supportive of family, conveniently ignoring the fact that Derek was a complete stranger to me and that the entire premise of the trip had been built on lies. All I wanted was to have a romantic getaway with someone special, and I thought my family would be happy for me. Instead, you are acting like I committed some terrible crime. As Madison kept talking, trying to justify her actions, I remembered something that made my blood run cold. I called my mother-in-law to check on something that was bothering me. During our brief conversation, Mom mentioned how sweet it was that I was treating Madison to a healing vacation after her recent heartbreak, and how generous the gesture was given Madison's financial struggles. Madison had told the entire family that this expensive Miami trip was my generous gift to help her recover from her breakup. She had painted herself as the victim of heartbreak who needed family support, and me as the caring sister-in-law who stepped up to provide it. The web of lies was even more extensive than I had realized. When I confronted Madison with this information, she had the nerve to threaten me. "If you try to make me look bad to the family over this, I will tell them how selfish you really are," she said. I will make sure they know that you tried to ruin my happiness because you are jealous that I found someone new. Derek had been listening to this entire exchange with growing horror. Finally, he could not stay silent anymore. Madison, this is completely wrong. You lied to me, you lied to your family, and you stole from Scarlett. I want nothing to do with this situation. His words seemed to snap something in Madison's composure. You are supposed to be on my side, Madison hissed at Derek. I did all of this for us, so we could have a perfect vacation together. Now you are turning against me just like she is. The desperation in her voice was palpable, but it only made her threats more aggressive. Our raised voices and obvious conflict had attracted the attention of airport security. 2 officers approached our gate area, clearly assessing whether our dispute was going to escalate into something that required intervention. The public nature of the scene was embarrassing, but I was beyond caring about appearances. In that moment, surrounded by strangers, staring at our family drama, everything became crystal clear to me. This was not an isolated incident or a misunderstanding. This was a pattern of manipulation and entitlement that Madison had probably been using for years. She had identified me as an easy target, someone who wanted family approval badly enough to be taken advantage of. I pulled out my phone and started documenting everything. I took screenshots of the booking confirmations, the credit card charges, and the text messages Madison had sent me about the trip plans. If she wanted to play games with family relationships, I was going to make sure I had evidence of exactly what had happened. Madison watched me gathering evidence with growing panic. "What are you doing? You cannot just take pictures of private conversations," she protested, but her voice lacked conviction. She was beginning to realize that her carefully constructed plan was falling apart. Derek shouldered his carry-on bag and looked directly at Madison. "I am not going to Miami, and I am not going to be part of whatever this is," he said firmly. "You need to figure out your own problems." He walked away from our gate without looking back, leaving Madison speechless for the first time since this whole confrontation began. I felt a surge of satisfaction as I watched Madison's romantic vacation plans crumble in real time. But I was not finished yet. I had one more move to make, and it was going to ensure that Madison faced real consequences for her manipulation instead of just disappointment. I called the airline customer service number and explained that I needed to cancel the reservations that had been booked using my credit card without my permission. Since I was the primary cardholder and the named passenger on the tickets, I had the authority to make this change. The representative was understanding and helpful, especially when I explained that fraudulent charges had been made to my account. As I spoke with the airline representative, I watched Madison's face cycle through confusion, realization, and finally panic. "Ah, Scarlett, you cannot cancel those tickets," she said loudly. "We are already at the airport. This is insane." But I continued my conversation with customer service, providing confirmation numbers, and verifying my identity. The cancellation process took about 15 minutes, during which Madison alternated between pleading with me to reconsider and threatening to make my life difficult if I went through with it. "You will regret this," she said at one point. "I will make sure the whole family knows how vindictive you are." Her threats only strengthened my resolve to follow through with the cancellations. When the airline representative confirmed that all reservations had been successfully canceled and that refund processing would begin within 3 to 5 business days, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Madison, on the other hand, looked like she might collapse. The reality of being stranded at the airport with expensive luggage and no way to travel was finally sinking in. "This is not over," Madison said, as I gathered my things and prepared to leave the gate area. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." But her words felt empty now. She was the one sitting alone at a departure gate with canceled tickets and a boyfriend who wanted nothing to do with her schemes. I walked away from that gate feeling more empowered than I had in years. For the first time since marrying into this family, I had stood up for myself instead of trying to keep the peace at my own expense. Madison's desperate calls and text messages followed me all the way to the parking garage, but I did not respond to any of them. The drive home from the airport gave me time to process everything that had happened. The initial hurt of Madison's betrayal was still raw, but it was mixed with a strange sense of relief. For months, I had been second-guessing my instincts about her behavior, wondering if I was being too sensitive or paranoid about her motives. Now, I had clear proof that my concerns had been justified all along. Jake was waiting for me when I got home, having expected to hear from me once I landed in Miami. When I walked through the door with my suitcase, instead of calling from a resort, his confusion quickly turned to concern. I told him everything that had happened, from the booking revelations to Madison's threats to Derek, walking away from the entire situation. My husband's response was exactly what I needed. Instead of trying to minimize the situation or suggest that Madison had just made a mistake, Jake was furious on my behalf. "I cannot believe she would manipulate you like that," he said. "And to involve the whole family in her lies, that is unforgivable." His support helped validate my decision to cancel the trip and walk away. The most difficult conversation was with my mother-in-law, who had been completely deceived by Madison's version of events. When I called to explain what had really happened, there was a long silence on the other end of the phone. "I am so sorry, Scarlett," she finally said. "I had no idea Madison was using our family relationships this way. I feel terrible that I believed her story without questioning it." Mom's shock and disappointment in Madison's behavior helped me realize that I was not the only victim in this situation. Madison had manipulated the entire family's perception of the situation, using their love and concern for her to create a cover story for her deception. Her willingness to damage family relationships for her own benefit showed a level of selfishness that went far beyond this single incident. In the days following the airport confrontation, I focused on activities that helped me process my emotions constructively. I went for long walks, had honest conversations with friends about what had happened, and spent extra time on hobbies that made me feel grounded and peaceful. The healing process was not immediate, but I could feel myself getting stronger each day. Madison made several attempts to contact me in the weeks after our failed vacation. Her messages started with angry accusations about my supposed selfishness and jealousy, then shifted to attempts at manipulation, and finally evolved into what seemed like genuine apologies. But I had learned enough about her patterns to recognize that her contrition was likely just another strategy to get what she wanted. I made a conscious decision to maintain firm boundaries with Madison going forward. This meant not responding to her messages, not engaging with her attempts to involve other family members as intermediaries, and being honest with relatives who asked about our relationship. Setting these boundaries felt uncomfortable at first, but it also felt necessary for my own emotional well-being. The experience taught me to trust my instincts about people and situations, even when others might think I am being overly cautious or suspicious. Those small warning signs I had noticed during the trip planning were actually important signals that something was wrong. Learning to listen to and act on those feelings has helped me navigate other relationships with more confidence and clarity. As time passed, I developed a deeper appreciation for the family relationships that are built on genuine mutual respect and affection. Jake's immediate support, his mother's willingness to acknowledge the truth, even when it was uncomfortable, and the friends who listened without judgment, all became more precious to me after experiencing Madison's manipulation. My relationship with the rest of Jake's family actually grew stronger in the aftermath of this incident. By being honest about what happened, instead of trying to protect Madison from the consequences of her choices, I showed that I was committed to authentic relationships rather than superficial peacekeeping. This honesty created space for deeper trust and more genuine connections. The situation with Madison also helped me recognize patterns in my own behavior that had made me vulnerable to manipulation. My desire to be accepted by Jake's family had sometimes led me to ignore red flags or excuse behavior that made me uncomfortable. Learning to value my own judgment and well-being as much as family harmony was an important step in personal growth. Madison eventually left town, claiming she needed a fresh start somewhere new. Before she moved, she made one final attempt to contact me, this time seeming to take responsibility for her actions and asking for forgiveness. While I appreciated the apparent growth in her acknowledgement of wrongdoing, I realized that forgiveness did not require me to trust her again or allow her back into my life. The most important lesson I learned from this experience was that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's harmful behavior even when they are family. By canceling those tickets and walking away from Madison's manipulation, I was not just protecting myself. I was also refusing to participate in a pattern that was ultimately destructive for everyone involved, including Madison herself. Looking back on that day at the airport, I feel grateful that the situation unfolded the way it did. If Madison had been more subtle with her deception, or if Derek had been willing to go along with her plans, I might have ended up funding their vacation while feeling confused and resentful about the experience. Instead, her overreach provided the clarity I needed to see the situation for what it really was and take appropriate action. The experience reinforced my belief that authentic relationships require honesty, mutual respect, and genuine care for each other's well-being. When someone consistently violates these principles, protecting yourself is not selfish or vindictive. It is a necessary act of self-preservation that creates space for healthier connections to flourish. Trust is like a vacation ticket. Once it has been canceled due to deception, you cannot just reissue it because someone asks nicely. Some destinations are meant to be traveled alone until others prove they are worthy travel companions. Have you ever had a family member try to manipulate you into paying for something under false pretenses? Let me know in the comments how you handled the situation. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who might need to hear about the importance of setting boundaries with manipulative relatives. Do not forget to subscribe for more stories about standing up for yourself in difficult family situations. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember that protecting your own well-being is never something you should feel guilty about. I hope you find the courage to trust your instincts and value yourself enough to walk away from situations that do not serve you.